The amount of combat power that's still flowing, that's still coming, that will be able to project over Iran is a multiples of what it currently is right now when you add up our capabilities and those of the Israeli Defense Forces.
First off, the war with Iran. Israel has launched what it's calling a broad wave of strikes overnight. The IDF says it's targeting the Iranian regime's infrastructure in Tehran.
The U.S. and Israel pummeling Iranian missile bases deep underground. ABC News verifying that 13 of the underground facilities have been damaged or destroyed. The Israeli Army Chief of Staff claiming 60% of the launchers have now been taken out.
What started as a targeted strike campaign has become something that military historians will spend careers trying to fully document. In the span of 8 days, the United States and Israel have conducted one of the most concentrated, most technologically sophisticated, and most strategically consequential air campaigns ever recorded in the history of modern warfare. The numbers alone are staggering enough to stop you cold. Over 3,000 confirmed American strikes delivered inside Iranian territory. Over 2,500 confirmed Israeli strikes. More than 6,000 munitions dropped by Israeli forces alone. 900 American strikes conducted in the first 12 hours of the operation. 200 targets struck by B-2 Spirit stealth bombers in a single 72-hour window, including deeply fortified underground facilities that Iran spent years and billions of dollars engineering specifically to survive exactly this kind of assault. They did not survive. Not one of them. Iran went into this conflict believing it had an insurance policy buried in the mountains, deep underground, carved into the Alborz mountain range surrounding Tehran. Iran had constructed a network of hardened ballistic missile launchers that its commanders genuinely believed were beyond the reach of any conventional strike package. These were not improvised facilities. These were engineered specifically to absorb the kind of punishment that American air power could deliver. Reinforced bunkers designed to absorb blast pressure, shielded from satellite detection, concealed from surveillance, built to preserve Iran's most survivable and most dangerous long-range missile systems, even in the worst-case scenario. Iran's strategists called them untouchable. CENTCOM's B-2 bombers just proved that word does not exist in this conflict. Dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs dropped on those launchers in a single coordinated strike wave, and facility after facility that Iran built as its ultimate backstop simply ceased to exist. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper confirmed the destruction publicly and on the record. The mountain did not protect them. The reinforcement did not save them. The years of investment and the billions of dollars spent building Iran's most protected military assets evaporated inside 72 hours. And that is only one piece of a collapse so comprehensive that it is genuinely difficult to process the full scope of it in real time. 80% of Iran's entire air defense network is gone. Confirmed. Not degraded, not suppressed, not temporarily neutralized. Gone. The radar installations that would have tracked incoming aircraft, the surface-to-air missile batteries that would have engaged them, the command and control infrastructure that would have coordinated any defensive response, all of it dismantled with a thoroughness that left Iran's skies completely open. American and Israeli aircraft are not approaching Tehran from standoff range anymore. They are flying directly overhead, low-altitude passes above the Iranian capital, circling, striking targets on demand, capturing the destruction on camera in real time. And Iran cannot launch a single interceptor, cannot achieve a single radar lock, cannot coordinate a single defensive response because the architecture that would have made any of that possible no longer exists. If you want to understand just how completely Iran's air force has been paralyzed, look at what Tehran scrambled to intercept Israeli F-35 Adir stealth fighters operating above its capital. Not an F-14 Tomcat, not a MiG-29, a Yak-130, a training aircraft. A jet designed to teach student pilots how to fly, sent into combat airspace against 5th-generation stealth fighters because that is what Iran had left that it was willing to risk. Iran's actual fighter fleet, built almost entirely around American platforms acquired before the 1979 revolution and cannibalized for spare parts for nearly 5 decades, is so degraded, so outmatched, and so thoroughly grounded by the destruction of the air defense network beneath it that Tehran chose to send a trainer into the sky, rather than expose its remaining operational jets to certain and immediate destruction. An Israeli F-35 shot that Yak-130 down in what became the first confirmed air-to-air kill by an F-35 against a manned aircraft in the entire history of combat aviation. The IDF released the footage. You can watch the missile leave the aircraft. You can watch it track. You can watch the Iranian jet come apart. That moment, a trainer jet sent to defend a capital city against stealth fighters, is the single most honest image of where this war stands right now. Iran has already accepted that it has lost the air war, it just has not said so publicly yet. The leadership picture is equally devastating. Iran's supreme leader is dead. The IRGC's top commanders are dead. The defense minister is dead. The chief of the armed forces is dead. The chief of the Supreme National Security Council is dead. Over 40 senior Iranian officials confirmed killed in just the first 100 hours of the operation. Israel struck over 750 targets inside Tehran alone during that window. 50 Israeli fighter jets conducted a single coordinated strike that collapsed the secret underground emergency bunker where Khamenei's inner circle had retreated believing they were protected. They were not protected. The command structure that Iran spent decades building to ensure the regime's survival in exactly this kind of scenario has been systematically and methodically dismantled from the top down. Iran's navy no longer exists as a functional fighting force. The US Secretary of Defense declared it combat ineffective following the confirmed sinking or destruction of over 30 Iranian warships. Admiral Cooper specifically confirmed that a massive Iranian drone carrier, a vessel roughly comparable in size to a World War II aircraft carrier, was struck and was still burning at the moment he addressed reporters. The Strait of Hormuz situation has created its own separate crisis, with Iran's attempts to close the strait costing global energy markets billions of dollars daily and directly threatening Chinese oil imports in ways that are now forcing Beijing to make calculations. It did not anticipate having to make this quickly. Subscribe right now if you're not already, because what we are about to walk through regarding Russia's direct involvement in the deaths of American service members is the most explosive and most underreported dimension of this entire conflict, and it connects directly to decisions being made in Washington right now that will determine how far this war expands. Russia is feeding Iran real-time satellite targeting intelligence on the exact locations of American troops, American warships, and American aircraft operating across the entire Middle East theater. This is not rumor. This is not speculation from anonymous sources with an agenda. This has been confirmed by 3 separate US officials speaking to the Washington Post, confirmed by 4 independent sources speaking to NBC News, confirmed by a US intelligence official who described the Russian operation specifically as a pretty comprehensive effort. Moscow's satellites are watching every American military asset in the region, tracking movement in real time, and transmitting those coordinates directly to Iranian strike commanders, whose own surveillance infrastructure has been so thoroughly destroyed that Tehran cannot locate US forces independently anymore. 6 American service members are dead. All 6 were killed in a single Iranian drone strike on a tactical operations center in Kuwait, a temporary structure, a facility that appeared on no publicly available map, a location that Iran, with its space command destroyed and its satellite surveillance capability obliterated, had absolutely no organic ability to identify on its own. Russia provided the coordinates. Iran fired the drone. 6 Americans died in a building that Tehran should never have been able to find. When you hold that sequence up against Moscow's public statements calling for restraint and diplomatic resolution, what you are looking at is a government actively participating in the killing of American soldiers while maintaining the fiction of non-involvement. That is not a fine distinction. That is the most consequential and most dangerous dynamic of this entire conflict, and it is being treated as a secondary story when it is arguably the primary one. Iran's own foreign minister confirmed the relationship without technically admitting it, which is the most damning kind of confirmation a diplomat can offer. Speaking to NBC News, he said they are supporting us politically and otherwise, smiled and declined to specify what otherwise covers. A foreign minister who genuinely wanted to deny Russian military intelligence support would deny it directly, clearly, and on the record. He did not deny it. He confirmed it in the language diplomats use when the truth is too dangerous to say out loud. Careful words. A smile. The door left open. Russia is Iran's eyes now, and the evidence is 6 American soldiers in body bags from a location Moscow helped Tehran find. When Trump was asked directly whether Russia is providing targeting intelligence to an enemy actively killing American service members, he called it a stupid question and changed the subject. The President of the United States, asked whether a nuclear-armed adversary is contributing to the deaths of American soldiers, redirected the conversation. That moment will matter when the full history of this conflict is written, and it is already mattering to the families of the 6 soldiers who died in Kuwait. Now look at where the operation itself is heading, because what CENTCOM just announced represents a fundamental escalation in the stated objectives of this campaign that changes everything about how you should be thinking about the endgame. For the first week of Operation Epic Fury, US and Israeli strikes focused on destroying existing launchers, eliminating leadership, and suppressing air defenses. That phase is essentially complete. The numbers confirm it. Over 60% of all Iranian ballistic missile launchers confirmed destroyed. 80% of the air defense network gone. The top command structure eliminated. Phase 1 is done. Phase 2 just started. And Phase 2 is industrial annihilation. Cooper told reporters directly that the mission is no longer just hitting what Iran has. The mission is now destroying Iran's ability to ever rebuild. Every missile factory inside Iran is now a target. Every production facility, every underground manufacturing complex, every parts depot, every assembly plant, every component of the industrial ecosystem that would allow Iran to reconstitute its missile capability after this war ends. America is not fighting to push Iran back to where it was before the strikes began. America is fighting to make certain Iran can never get back to where it was. Trump issued that order personally. He gave CENTCOM the explicit mandate to level Iran's ballistic missile industrial base entirely, permanently, irreversibly. That is a different war than the one most people think they are watching. The China dimension adds a layer of strategic complexity that could transform this conflict entirely if Beijing moves from observation to action. US intelligence has assessed that China may be preparing to provide Iran with financial assistance, spare parts, and missile components. Not direct weapons transfers, but the industrial supply chain support that would keep Iran's remaining systems operational and eventually allow Tehran to begin rebuilding what has been destroyed. China has stayed out of direct involvement so far, and there is a specific economic reason for that restraint. Beijing relies heavily on Iranian oil, and Iran's attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz is costing China billions of dollars in disrupted energy imports every single day. China wants this war to end. But if it does not end quickly, and if Iran's military capability collapses completely before any ceasefire materializes, China loses its most strategically important regional partner permanently. That calculation is shifting in real time, and if Beijing begins flowing spare parts and missile components into Iran, CENTCOM's industrial dismantlement campaign becomes a race against a Chinese resupply pipeline. That is a completely different conflict than the one that launched 8 days ago, and no existing contingency plan fully accounts for it. Assemble the complete picture right now and hold it steady. B-2 bombers destroying 200 targets in 72 hours, including underground launchers that were supposed to be invulnerable. 80% of Iran's air defense eliminated. Iran's Space Command destroyed in a single strike, taking with it Tehran's last remaining layer of battlefield awareness from orbit. 30 warships sunk. 50 Israeli jets collapsing Khamenei's emergency bunker, the supreme leader dead. 40 senior officials dead in the first 100 hours. Iran's missile industrial base now designated as the primary target of the next strike phase. Russia providing Iranian commanders with the coordinates of American soldiers and getting 6 of them killed. China calculating whether the moment has arrived to enter the resupply equation. Trump demanding unconditional surrender with no conditions attached and no off-ramp offered. Hegseth confirming publicly that the firepower surge is just beginning. And American jets still circling above Tehran in skies that Iran can no longer defend, hitting targets on demand, on camera, in real time. The paths forward from this moment are not complicated to identify, but none of them lead anywhere. Simple. If Iran's remaining commanders accept the reality that surrounds them and negotiations begin, the industrial strikes stop before the factories are permanently gone, and some version of a post-war Iran remains possible. If Russian coordinates keep flowing and American casualties keep rising, Washington escalates to the full industrial base, and Iran loses its missile capability, not just for this war, but for the next generation, with consequences for regional stability that nobody has fully mapped. And if China moves from watching to resupplying, this stops being a regional air campaign with a defined endpoint and starts being something that the international system has no established framework for managing. The jets are still in the air, the bombs are still falling, the footage is still being captured and released and circulated. The firepower, according to the man running this operation, is about to surge dramatically. And the Russia betrayal, the China calculation, and the industrial phase that just began mean that what started as a strike campaign is now something that could define the next decade of American foreign policy. Middle Eastern security architecture, and great power competition in ways that nobody fully anticipated when the first B-2 lifted off and pointed its nose toward Tehran.